as we'll see. All right, what about the situation today? According to the official census just a couple of years ago, almost 34% are Muslims. This figure may be too small. Others have said differently. The U.S. State Department, for example, says 45%. Well, who's to say? There's this kind of argument. Muslims themselves like to say they're more than half. Probably that's not true. Probably the actual figure is somewhere between these two figures here. In the east, especially in the Somali Afar area, they're a majority. In the south, many places in the south, other places as well. Really, you can find Muslims almost everywhere in Ethiopia. Some of the key ethnic groups are the Somali and the Afar. In the east, we're virtually 100%. The Oromo, the largest ethnic group, considered to have more than half are Muslims. And we mustn't forget the ancient city of Accra, sometimes considered by African Muslims as the fourth most important city after Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. It's a fascinating place. If you ever visit Ethiopia, you have to visit Accra. Just has its own very interesting character. Something that we see elsewhere in Africa is this contextualization of Islam with African traditions, which was enhanced by the spread of Sufi teaching. There are several Sufi orders in Ethiopia. These are just the most important among others. And this has led to lots of shrines. You might have heard of the most famous one, the shrine of Sheikh Hussein in Bali, in the southeastern region. Thousands come every year to collect the soil and water to bring back home as to put on their houses and so forth. And, of course, the incorporation of traditional religious beliefs and customs. But conservative Islam has come as well, especially since 1991, with the new contacts, especially with Saudi Arabia. Wahhabism has spread, especially among Oromo Muslims. In Ethiopia, as I think elsewhere, these Wahhabis prefer to call themselves Salafis, although they're not really the same Salafis as we have in the early 20th century Egypt, or Tawhidis, emphasizing the uniqueness of God, or Ahl Sunnah. Their goal, primarily, is the reform of Ethiopian Islam. They don't claim to want to set up an Islamic state, although sometimes you may wonder if they hold some aspirations for that. They are involved with Islamic mission, da'wah, and to some degree in politics. Another group, the Tablighi Jama'at, are there as well, but not nearly as evident. What about tensions? They are there between Christians and Muslims. The historical dimension has really played into this. This first point goes back to that Johannes I, when he separated the, or was it Johannes IV? Now I'm not sure. But, one of them insisted that Muslim and Christian butchers had to slaughter only for their own people. And that's lasted until the present day. Hardly any Christians and Muslims will eat meat from the other group. There's lots of polemical literature. On the Muslim side, they translate Ahmadiyyat prolifically. On the Christian side, the Orthodox Church especially comes out with some pretty strong stuff against Islam. In Aksum, which was the ancient capital There are Muslims there. They wanted to set up their own mosque. But Aksum is the center for Orthodox Christianity. That's where the Ark is, the supposed Ark of the Covenant is housed there. And so the Orthodox Christians refuse. And still today, there is no mosque in Aksum. The Gospel of Barnabas has been translated into Amharic. If you've not heard of the Gospel of Barnabas, you'll run into it eventually. It's an infamous forgery of the Gospel into an Islamic framework. And Muslim men, as we see elsewhere, often marry Christian girls, and some say this is a strategy. And we have Christian crusades and quotes, evangelistic rallies, which are often rather polemical and verbal attacks against Islam. So these things are carried on. There are occasional and mostly isolated actual physical clashes, generally instigated by Muslims, and they've increased in the last few years. And these are the most serious ones. Kimise is in the northwest of Ethiopia. This cartoon of Muhammad got there, and apparently Muslims attacked churches because of that. Probably the worst case in the fall of 2006, for a group calling themselves after the Kharijites, apparently coordinated themselves in 3 separate areas and destroyed many churches, forced many conversions. In Bali, in the southeast, during worship, Sunday worship, 2 churches were attacked and several were injured. Gondar in the north, an Orthodox, predominantly Orthodox Christian town, and then Desi in the northwest near Kimise also had clashes over the construction of mosques or churches on disputed land. But there are some positive developments as well. The government has done a pretty good job intervening with these clashes. They've stepped in, stopped them, and then have more recently begun to try to set up peace and reconciliation committees where Muslim leaders and Christian leaders together in a locality are called together to try to deal with past conflict and to talk out issues before they erupt into future conflict. There was a special convention a couple of years ago. Another one is being planned. Both Muslim and Christian leaders are invited to speak on peace and development. And then the program at the Makana Yesu Seminary, where I taught on Christian-Muslim relations. This was an initiative of the Makana Yesu's church, and it's especially trains at the bachelor level pastors who want to go into outreach and dialogue programs for among Muslims. One of my former students got together with some Muslims and started an NGO together with Muslims in which they tried to encourage development, joint projects for development and so forth. All right, we're near the end here. Here are my ideas, anyway, for how Ethiopia can be hopefully a good example for Christian-Muslim relations in the future. But I feel that if that's going to happen, Christians and Muslims have to work hard at working together for things like education. And it can't just be at the institutions, but both Muslims and Christians have to get